that GuMiho. We'll talk more about these players after introducing them. In the bottom left, no, we're not. Just kidding. It is Royal Blood, though. I didn't kid about that.
Wait, we got you there, ZG. So, a quick moment or so, maybe a quick issue, while GuMiho gets something sorted out on the stage, and we will be underway in just a couple of moments' time. So, waiting to see what's up, and we'll figure this out, get into the action for what, like we say, is hopefully going to be a very exciting ZVT. Hopefully very back and forth, and I think Solar said it, you know, GuMiho can really play a bit of anything. We all look at GuMiho and say, oh yeah, mech this, mech that, right? But at the same time, like, GuMiho can play a solid bio game, and it's that versatility that really makes him a very scary opponent.
Yeah, GuMiho has been playing some really fine bio TVZ as well. I kind of would doubt him as far as the later stages of TVZ, so not necessarily the late game, but just kind of more of that bio play, mid-game, action everywhere, all of the bio everywhere at once, and be like, ah, well, you know, it's GuMiho, it's not Beyond, right? But then he would do what Beyond would do, and then he would also have some very good late game as well. So, again, if they're both playing at 100%, I think this will be very contested. I believe GuMiho is getting something done with his headset, so still having that going on. Yeah. Any other thoughts before we get into this one?
I'm just excited, Zombie Grub. I really am. When I looked at the schedule and you guys left me this one to cast, I was like, wow. Was I nice to you guys this week or something?
Well, I mean, I was excited for it, but a lot of the other guys did actually kind of just, not quite, like, they didn't brush it off, but they were like, you know, Solar is going to win. And I think Solar is favored for their history. That's certainly what the data shows, but I just don't think it's going to be a breeze. Not just because I feel like the games that I've seen from them have been actually quite good, even if it ends like 0-2 in Solar's favor, but because of the momentum that GuMiho has built up here and the play that he has displayed against some of the greats of the StarCraft 2 scene. Obviously, everyone talking about that win versus Maru.
No, that's very true. It looks as though we are going to get back into it. CG, I believe you were going to take us away.
I was. All right, let's do it again. In the bottom left, game number 1 for Onside Gaming, he is Solar.
In the top right, our blue Terran player, let's make some noise for GuMiho!
One of the more dependable Terrans to make it happen. Could be seeing that in this best of 5. GuMiho already starting off a little bit differently with that forward barracks. Now we know that Byun does the forward 2 barracks basically every single time. But it's not just him going for those low ground. They've actually been a big mix-up as far as all of the Terrans really go. And GuMiho has done the 2 racks opener into Reapers, but he's also done it with Marines to really trip them up. And in this case, it's not even 2, it is just the Flood Depot barracks. So for right now, it is a 1 racks expand, just you have a faster wall off in the natural.
Very interesting. I thought for a moment maybe we just see a Marine try and catch an early Overlord, but nope, we're just going to go for a Reaper expand. It's just all on the low ground. Any major immediate benefit to this? To me, this just gives you like a depot and a racks on the low ground that's maybe more susceptible to roaches, which is sometimes not so fun, but I guess is generally fine.
Yeah, I guess that is the concern, especially though the roaches having that range, right? It doesn't matter if the tech lab is safe against the melee units, it's not going to be safe against the roaches. But that's kind of what the Reaper is for, right? Like if the Reaper scouts something that is suspicious, then you can take defenses, you can take precautions. Otherwise, if it isn't going to be one of the cheesier things that a Zerg can do, then you do just have that nice wall off in the natural already set up. And then, I mean, maybe they do a Baneling bust, it's a bit concerning, but Solar unlikely to do those things. They haven't also mentioned, by the way, but I'm reminded looking at the UI that GuMiho is, really, I think was the only teamless player coming into this, and certainly now the only teamless player coming in the round of 4.
Yeah, no, he's been looking for a team for a little while. He kind of missed that sort of initial. The World Team League usually gets like an influx of players like added into teams, but he kind of missed that kind of timing and just hasn't picked up a team since. But a result like this, I feel like he might have a couple DMs opening up the next couple days.
I certainly hope so. He absolutely deserves it. Not only is he doing really well in the tournament, but he also is just such a fun player to watch. And you have that nice, interesting fact about him, too. The Tal Terran is what we used to call him quite frequently, and we just stopped kind of just, I don't know, because everyone knew about it. But just to remind you guys, he does play with a Tal on his mouse, actually. So it might seem a bit awkward, but he makes do.
When you're used to it, I guess it ain't so bad, as we are going to be seeing the first couple of Hellions showing up. He's still building Reapers, by the way, and maybe this is in part the idea of that forward barracks are just going to keep on producing for a while, rally across the map as much as possible, and really put some pressure on this third hatchery for the moment. The Queen's going to start moving forward. They don't want to go too far forward because then the door might be open for units to run on by.
Yeah, gotta be very concerned, especially as the creep is not yet connected, and it is just rallying across the map. We do have exactly what you just said, the Hellions and Reapers running past those Queens. Even if they're on creep, we know they're just generally slow. 10 seconds to Ling speed means, well, they wouldn't be able to catch up even if there were enough of them, but there really isn't. 4 drones already going down, and more to come in the main base.
We are not done at all. 7 drones down, and of course the rest of them are still kind of stacked up. They're starting to get away now. This is also a lot of lost mining time, a lot of dead Zerglings, and GuMiho has really found himself some good damage early. 3 Reapers should mostly be able to get out. Looks like 1 will fall. There's a drone on the low ground, but there's also Lings here. Maybe none of these Reapers are truly going to get away. 2 more Hellions will commit in. What do they find? Just 1 extra Zergling. That will be it done. I think I like it for GuMiho. It's kind of expensive Hellion-wise, but he's going to keep building Hellions, and that makes me like it more because it means we're not going to be without Hellions for the next stage of the game.
Right, protecting that transfer over to the third base is usually the really tough part after you give away your Hellions. Now, GuMiho's third is nowhere near completed, in fact, just started, but still, the point stands. You don't want to just let Solar say, like, oh, well, now the Hellions are done with, so I can just drone, drone, drone. He has to worry about the same thing happening. Case in point, again, maybe not enough Lings as the Hellions roast toasty up those attacking units. Now they look for the pole old workers. 6 drones going down, and the Hellions will fall, but behind this, we do also have Banshees, which could be adding even more drone damage. Little bits here and there, as Solar does have Spore Crawlers, but nonetheless, this is some good early game harassment that I'm guessing Solar was just not anticipating.
Yeah, no, this was really something a little bit just out of the ordinary, right? Because especially the second round of Hellions, you don't expect a few extra Reapers. It's just that little bit funky. And we are just going to go into, first of all, Cloak Banshees, but following that stim. So setting straight up towards a bio transition here. GuMiho wanting to do damage early and capitalize on that ASAP afterward.
Well, I do have to mention now, because the Hellions are once again sacrificed, that there is a little bit of a gap where GuMiho doesn't really have a lot of protection for his third CC once he lifts it over and tries to land it. The Marine count's just not there. He did spend a lot of time, so a lot of minerals on the Hellions, but really think about the time that you would usually be transferring over that factory to start building tanks or wooden mines or just build reactors for the other barracks. So do keep that in mind, but Solar I don't think was eager to make enough Lings to really threaten a counterattack. Currently just nibbling on those rocks right there. The double Banshees do show up, but as I mentioned, Spore Crawlers were in play, so it's really just about what kind of they can get on the transfers we see there or on the edges of mineral lines.
I mean, it's been a great start. Like you say, the transfers were definitely in GuMiho's favor. He's found 5 drones here. He just needs to be careful. Don't want to lose those Banshees, and that one is pretty low energy, so keep it out. We're going to actually turn the higher energy Banshee around to try and just get 1 extra drone maybe. He realizes the Overseer's on the way. He sees he's not going to get the chance as the Banshee plays a dangerous game. Gets out alive though, and that is both kept alive. They can be great for denying creep later on, maybe even sometimes a future base they can sit on top of and put some damage on. So nice to keep them alive. They are going to go home and get repaired, I'd imagine, in the next few moments. And at the same time, Solar is just setting up for the 4th base.
Yes, indeed. Going into that macro game. So GuMiho obviously choosing to go into that bio, and Solar, well, goal for him was a drone and not take drone damage. Now that's not exactly happened, but just want to keep in mind that GuMiho also did change up his opener a little bit to do all that damage. So perhaps the follow-up not going to be as devastating, depending on how Solar actually toes the line, basically, walks that tightrope of making army versus making drones. There's actually little supply blocks right there, but it was temporary. He already has Banelings, with Baneling speed about over halfway done, and his Overlord, well, it did just get taken out. It saw that the army did spend that time. An extra 5 seconds could go a long way for the Bane speed.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Every few seconds counts, as we do have GuMiho already pushing down the right-hand side. This has been a game he's been in control of. He's been deciding when the fights happen, and that will continue here, unless Solar jumps on some of the reinforcements on their own, but that opportunity is not allowed. And GuMiho just comes straight down this right side where you can get a great avenue of attack. The tank going to go high ground for the siege up. Nope. Kind of deciding where to go still, apparently, but at some point we'll set up, and this is going to be still maybe going to have to come in from the top and the bottom. GuMiho going to start pressuring this base very shortly, and we'll see if he can break on through.
Might have been a couple extra seconds for Solar to finish up that Bane speed, but it also now meant that there was a second tank, and that can be abused on this position. The tank's obviously not hitting anything important, but they cover the Marine retreat, so GuMiho, as long as he is paying attention, he can absolutely do this dance and just take down some of the Queens, Lings, perhaps even take down that health of the hatchery, so later on, it becomes more snipeable. I do believe that Solar will eventually have enough units to clean this up, but his counterattack, or run by rather, not really working out. Gonna have to think about how he's gonna surround this army before the hatchery dies, but there it is, it gets sniped. GuMiho even picking up and being able to retreat back to his tanks. It's just a straight up victory.
Yeah, it's just massive for GuMiho. You can see the supply coming in his favor. He has not lost a Marine yet, and so many Lings were just bleeding out there, running forward, running back. GuMiho having a great time, and if you can keep this push going, I mean, Solar might not be able to stop it, considering just how well GuMiho is trading. These Banshees we mentioned earlier, great to keep alive for exactly this reason. They can get rid of some creep here and there. This time we will start to lose some units from GuMiho, but he's supply blocking Solar on repeat, and Solar just can't spend the money when he absolutely needs to, because this next push of GuMiho is not going to be any easier to hold than the first.
Solar's really not been allowed to breathe for very much. There was that time between the last Hellion run by and the Marine push, but that just wasn't enough to really get him into a comfortable position. He had kind of finished up droning perhaps, and his creep sort is about to be out there on that 4th base, but he couldn't set up anything preemptively. GuMiho taking great advantage of that, keeping up the pressure, even showing off some of his micro with those Bane snipes and the quick pickup. As long as he's not punished, why not? And by the way, his macro behind it looking nice, the 2-2, very close to finishing, and a 4th command center done as I speak.
I love what he's following up with as well, though, these Liberators to help you just put a little bit more pressure on to take some positions, because he might be back row behind it, but he's going to be pushing as well, right? And he knows that, so love that. Even if the Libs just go to harass 1 or 2 locations while the bigger push gets set up, it all looks great for GuMiho. 2-2 is done, so that upgrade advantage is available going into these next fights, and Solar is kind of scrabbling to Hydras. He's sort of starting up a hive. These are very hopeful things, and honestly, right now, maybe it's not a bad call because he's behind and he needs something serious to happen, so if he can get away with the tech, maybe that's his way back in, but it does mean he's even more exposed to the next push.
Worse Zerg, and I'd be extremely worried at this point with the supply and a lot of openness on the right side that Solar can't scout outright, but it is Solar, and I feel like he has made a career out of this, but he just basically can defend even when he's a little bit behind, just again, walking that tightrope and then occasionally getting some really nice surrounds. So I believe in his potential to come back, but right, he needs to really catch up on the pacing of this game, and yet again, finding himself just purely on the defense already on his hatchery, right? You can't just get anything to preempt GuMiho's move out, stop his tanks from sieging in these abusive positions.
Absolutely, we're going to see Lingbane Hydra starting to run forward right here. GuMiho is sieged up with tanks and Liberators alike, so Solar just takes a couple of grabs and then gets out of there. Still got those Banshees roaming around, and GuMiho has so many units as he is coming down with more of them through the center via that left-hand side and just getting further forward, closer towards these bases of Solar, and all this time he's keeping that creep spread pushed right back.
I might have missed something, but GuMiho's upgrade timings are really pristine. Like immediately into that 3-3, they're already so far along. As Solar finally finishes his 2-2, he has that hive, but he really has to pick and choose what he gets from that hive. Another hatchery in the sights of these Marines. Not going to be snapped this time as Solar pulls the trigger. Everything being sent off of creep. Unfortunate for Solar, even if he manages to push this back, it will not be a very good trade for him, and he doesn't push it back. GuMiho now with plenty of Marines left over continues his advance.
Gets sieged up once again. Solar will try and dive into a couple of Vipers to try and give him something to dislodge siege tanks, or maybe even the Liberators. But yeah, GuMiho not truly having to fall back, able to keep the pressure up for Solar to have an immediate response once again, and he's going to start taunting him back into siege tank fire almost immediately. Getting rid of some of these Banelings, just runs back off creep again, let the tanks go to work. And these Marines are just putting in absolutely overtime right now, as GuMiho's position here is absolutely beautiful.
A couple of Banelings did hit, which is nice for Solar, but he still hasn't dislodged this, and that is the bigger problem as GuMiho takes the forward 4th base. He now is just rallying along a very safe path. That also protects him from run-bys that can be tricky. On the right side, he's been constantly denying Solar's attempts to run by his 3rd base so he can focus all on this fight, all on his micro, the positioning of his tanks, perhaps finally sniping this base. I feel like it's either sniping the base at the very least or straight up winning the game right here, right now.
Yep, absolutely. Let's see if Solar can actually push this back. There's a blinding cloud, much needed. There should be a second on the next tank, but the tank line goes so deep. Bio units still on the left-hand side as well. Solar can't clean them all out, and his supply is once again looking a little bit miserable as GuMiho will actually focus some attention to the left-hand side. There is a base there up for grabs. And I think this is honestly not a bad position to fight. It is going to give Solar the creep spread, but he doesn't have as many banelings this time around to utilize that, so the tanks will just clean those up, and Hydras are going to be left standing on their own, which is never a pretty situation.
Yeah, I think that was his worst fight yet. Down the ramp, some banelings stuck behind the Hydras, less than ideal. Vipers actually getting involved without getting sniped. There's not enough Marines right there, but they do the blinding clouds and nothing's there to kill them. Solar does top out. GuMiho with an incredibly convincing game one, just never letting up the pressure. And of course, most importantly, keeping his mechanics in check. The macro behind the pressure is something that I think he has faltered on in the past, why he stopped being that GSL contender, but he's really been working on it. So he once again contended last year in GSL, did pretty well this time, and obviously is doing fantastic right here.
Fantastic opening. I love just how aggressive he was from the very start of this game, and he just never let it up. He had the second Hellion run by even, and then of course he had the first push, and behind it all he was pristine. You mentioned the upgrades, and that was just him slowing Solar down a little bit, but being perfect on his own macro. He didn't miss out on 2-2. He didn't miss out on 3-3. He made sure every possible advantage he could have had was used to the extreme. And yeah, he was just so good at setting this position up, and he just knew that this position's not meant to be easily broken by the Zerg. He pulled back at the right times. He went forward and grabbed extra units at the right points as well. GuMiho did a fantastic job in this first game, and I love the way he opens up. Just, again, the aggression, the confidence and belief in himself.
Yeah, I mean, Solar is going to be a little more on edge about those early Hellion run-bys, right? So maybe he's going to make a couple more lings than he should, and then GuMiho, doesn't open that way or doesn't pull the trigger, and then Solar's still like, well, the early game still affected me. I have 4 less drones because of it. So it's, it's a beautiful start for the, again, only non-Zerg remaining in the tournament. A lot of people are going to be cheering for another TVZ in the finals, but we all know we also love Solar, and he is usually a very good defensive Zerg player. Just getting tripped up, so then the trip next was worse, and the trip next was worse, and then he's, falling on his face.
Well, we get into map number 2, and I think Solar will be pretty happy to see the sights of altitude. Usually this is a fun one, but then you've got to question, why didn't the Terran veto it? In the bottom left, our red Zerg from Onside Gaming down a map. Let's give him some love. It's Solar.
And in the top right, repping the non-Zerg, but actually teamless and still rocking it in a tournament, he is the Blue Terran, GuMiho.
Altitude.
Oh.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's one of those maps where maybe GuMiho lets it through over Ancient because he kind of likes the mech stuff, and
yes,
it can be okay on this map.
Yep.
So then even more beautiful to go proxy mode.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to bring up, because I was going to bring up, I believe it was his match versus Dark, wasn't it? I think that's what it was, where he played an incredible game on altitude with Battle Mech. He actually was in control from start to finish, but it still got complicated because, well, his opponent was really good. And it was just a thing of beauty to watch him play that out on altitude. But you're right. If that's what Solar was anticipating, because he's, seen some of the previous games, or that's how he's played in previous matches against the guy, it's the complete opposite. It's not even just a 2 racks, it is a very dedicated 3 racks.
Yeah, gonna go absolutely all out here. Such a large map as well that Solar can't get an overlord across easily, especially if he doesn't scout straight away, or if he tries to scout the barracks and then he doesn't see them. He won't have an overlord across the map. If that's the case, there's no checking to see if SCVs are being pulled or if it's an expansion behind it, right? So even more aggressive options basically for GuMiho.
I mean, I gotta say, GuMiho, just watching him throughout the entire tournament, watching the series back to back, you're always like, well, can he keep the momentum? Can he keep changing up his build without being the one caught off guard? And he just keeps on doing it. The 3 racks has begun. Of course, Solar got the scouts with the Overlord there, so he is able to pull the drones, get one of those cancels, but still enough time to place down another bunker, and the Marine count is growing steadily.
Yeah, that spank roll is very far forward, which will take a bit of damage, and of course may even end up being cancelled. You can see GuMiho trying to be safe. He wants to make sure this bunker gets up. That will be his lifeline in this game. And if he doesn't get that up, he really wants to get a lot of the drones here. I gotta say, it's a massive amount of time where Solar's not been mining with these drones, right? They've just been dancing around, not really doing anything. And that I hate, especially if GuMiho just backs up and plays fairly safe, especially if he ends up on an SCV pull. But this Marines are going to get in the bunker, and that is horrible here for Solar, as GuMiho is going to get so much value. 7, 8 workers going down. He jumps out. His Marines will kite backwards. This was incredible for GuMiho. Solar is in so much pain.
That was like a full surround of the bunker, and yet those Marines were just like, whoop.
Yeah,
Like,
and
somehow got out. Oh, man. And, of course, the Marine count still being added on to means that there is that imposing threat right outside your base. Are they actually building more Marines? Are they going to try and hit me at, with 20 of them, and then I'm droning because I need to make up for so much of that damage? Big question marks here. Another reason why I did like GuMiho going for the proxy racks is that I do feel like in the past, Solar has looked a little weak against them. I feel like he's done a great job shoring up the defenses, but there's always that to consider. GuMiho starting off, at least certainly with the momentum, now getting his command center back at home. Solar supply blocked, having to use his minerals on overlords instead of just right into the drones. It's just a very icky game for the Zerg.
It's nasty, right? I mean, you just don't know what you're up against. Like, is he expanding? Do I need to make units here? You kind of got to just gamble as Solar. Obviously, you see more Marines showing up. There is one barracks in the sky, which is a pretty good indicator, but GuMiho is going to go anyways. He's going to force a transfusion on the Spine Crawler. He's going to come in and fight it anyways. Not enough Lings to scare him off, so these Marines just produced off of 2 barracks after this one lifted are enough to get in for more damage. The drones are going down. Overlords are going to be dropping. I think that Queen might be in some trouble as well, and GuMiho is showing absolutely no mercy to take a 2-0 lead.
Wow, GuMiho just keeping the momentum going. I'm just so impressed, Like, I really don't want to not talk about Solar, but it just... GuMiho is in some of the greatest shape of his life. If he brings this to the GSL, I could see him absolutely winning another one of those. But right here, just absolutely phenomenal play, changing up the build orders. And in fact, if he does get the 3-0, it might be actually our fastest series yet. I mean, the ZVP was 3-0, but at least it had a decent amount of time in those individual games.
Especially when game 1 of this felt a bit more over before it really ended as well, right?
Yes,
it felt like
yeah.
GuMiho had that commanding lead from the start. What a decision here, right? I feel like with this barracks up in the sky, you're like, oh, he's not really going to go for it, right? Because he's not producing with at least one of these racks, but yeah, he just goes for it. He sees that Solar didn't make enough units, gets the Spine, and he can push on through. I guess a big part of this, he killed that Overlord, which supply blocked Solar for a few moments as well, a little bit earlier, so just those little things and allowing him to get a 2-0 lead. What a position for GuMiho to play from. And especially when Altitude is that go-to Zerg map as well. We know this map pool is quite nice for the Terrans. And I mean, you talk about the next maps, Dragon Scales, Babylon, Grezvan. They're all the Terraning maps.
Whole map pool is.
Okay, we're all Blood and Altitude on CG.
No, this is such a scary position for Solar to be in. He has been down 2 games and brought it back. We know that much. He certainly is capable of doing it, but I mean, GuMiho just has his bag of builds. It was already a matchup where I think, build variety was important, but then add on the GuMiho effect to it, and it must be so scary. We're heading into what could be possibly the final game of the series, just like that. In the bottom right, up 2-0, he is GuMiho!
Last chance for our Zerg in the top left-hand side. From on-site gaming in the blue, it is Solar.
There's really so many things that could have been done in that last game. As you pointed out, the battle mech, obviously we saw 3 racks. I was also thinking some cheeky double battlecruiser stuff, which Oliveira tried to start off the series versus Raynor. And then it was just the 3 racks, which, worked out, kind of gave him an easier win, too, and just furthered the momentum of GuMiho's tournament, but also the series, and gives him the confidence boost. It's just an amazing position to be in. We know that with 2-0 on the board, but the type of games that are played out are also important. And as you said, the first game might have been a little more contested, but Solar was constantly on the ropes in it.
Yeah, he's not been allowed to play his game, right? He's always been responding. He's always been reacting, playing catch-up at the very least. And that's very different to the Solar we saw in the winners stage, for example, where he was the guy running by to get a whole bunch of SDVs, the player who was really dominating, the one who's really getting a lot done against those Terran players and really controlling the game in a big way. So, yeah, GuMiho's taken those options away from him early in a beautiful manner. I think he's great, chosen some great builds for the series so far. And this time around, he's going to get that nice quick reactor here on Dragon Scales.
Yes, reactor first coming through here. So you're not going to get a scout in your opponent. And you don't have him, well, actually, it depends on what he's going to get from the reactor. Is it just going to be right into Marines? It is right into Marines. So the Marines are going to cover any Overlord scouts that might happen later on down the line, right? Which is also annoying. This is now leading up to the potential of a couple other different builds. As I said, TVZ has actually really opened up in the build variety. I think it's always been a matchup where that is important, but with the low ground 2-rack coming in, and then also before that low ground 2-rack kind of took over the conversation, I remember we saw a lot of Byun and Maru doing this type of opener with Marines and then a medevac, and it seemed kind of odd, and then we even saw like battlecruisers after that one, thinking back to, I guess it was last Katowice, 2021, or 22 rather, times a concept.
No, you're right though. Like these builds were very popular. There's a lot of different ways of doing these kind of builds as well, right? Which kind of falls into what GuMiho likes doing as well, which is mixing it up, doing things a little bit funky. So, yeah, doing that once again here. This Marine deny is really nice because you can just stop the link from seeing what's going on. We are going to swap the factory to the reactor here though, and we are going to start up with some Hellions.
What is that? Is that an SCV?
On the third.
Yes, okay, I thought they might do this. I was like, I saw the Marines moving out, and if that's an SCV, you can put down a cheeky bunker, you can hide it, and I mean, you can even sometimes be aggressive, because at this point in time, the Zerg player is just trying to drone, maybe 4 lings, just, you know, because they expect a Reaper, but yeah, that bunker going down as secretly as possible. I mean, Solar's recently had to deal with this. I think he might know about the bunker, but then, you know, where's his state of mind currently, and has he recently dealt with it? So the Marines are one thing, the bunker adding to them is another, and Hellions reinforcing lickety-split across the map. It's already going to be a very awkward game again for Solar.
Yeah, this is not fun at all. We've got the Hurt Marines in the bunker straight away. The first Hellions already looking to dive by. Lings are there to meet them though, and this shouldn't be too successful. We should just take a couple shots on the Lings, and that will be all. So that part didn't go so well for GuMiho, but this hatchery's taking damage, half HP already. Queens, Lings, all joined up together. It's going to have to be an expensive hold here, unfortunately, for Solar, but it is a necessary one, because he obviously can't let this hatchery die.
Yeah. We see GuMiho trying to target down some of the Queens, or at least one of them, but obviously it's very microable, so kind of just let the Marines do whatever they could before that bunker gets taken down. Kudos to Solar for not overreacting to A, the Marines, and like, I think just making Lings and then sending them out willy-nilly, and then 2, being properly placed. The 2 Hellions would not have barbecued the drones particularly quickly, but it is almost a bit of like a hand wave thing right there, where it's like, hey, the bunker's really scary. Okay, well, the Hellions are actually going to do that damage.
Would it be nice if the Hellions were on that bunker, though? Because then they would have helped so much against the Zerglings. And then all of a sudden, it is a little bit of a tougher breakout as well. So yeah, a bit of a shame. I mean, I like the idea of diving in the natural, but maybe he could have been a bit more patient until he knew the Lings were maybe on the bunker as well.
Right.
Either way, here we are with some Hellion Raven, which is actually always fun because the Raven can actually help you a little bit against the Queens with some auto turrets. And of course, it provides vision against the creep throughout this as well, as we do see a full scout here from Solar. Gets to see everything that's going on, the extra barracks timing and all of that goodness. So, and of course, at this point, there's a third CC from GuMiho as well, worth noting, with Solar heading into Roaches for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, he's going to once again at least have a game to play out, unlike the last one. And this time he's going to change the tempo of the match by going into those Roaches. GuMiho, I mean, with the Raven added in, it's something that we have seen occasionally. Certainly when the Raven got changed, we saw a lot of people experimenting once again, but it's not extremely popular. I do like it with the way that GuMiho is just playing, right? He's not just kind of accepting that Hellions often don't do a whole lot, or just getting the Banshees because they're nice and safe, and they might find a couple of drones. He's really trying to make Solar second guess his ability to defend in the early game, and in this case, it's not so much defending like his drones, but rather his creep spread, which is absolutely important as we head into the mid game.
Yep, absolutely. Just make sure we can protect as much of that as possible, have as much vision, as much control of the map as you can, because you know the Terran is going to be very aggressive if you don't have it out up in front. So that's exactly what GuMiho's going to try and deny as he shows up. This Raven again means you don't have to spend any scans, and this is nice to get the 2 front creep tumors, so that creep is going to recede just a little bit. Roaches on the way out. Such fast upgrades from GuMiho again into siege tanks at the moment. His setup is good against the Roaches. Just needs to make sure he doesn't overly aggress into them, right? Like he doesn't go for a big push and then Solar's like, surprise, 6 drones, mass roach, you get overrun, I counterattack, and the game is pretty much mine.
Yeah, surprise being a very key word there. Is GuMiho going to be surprised? Does he know that it is Roaches? You know, if he does, then he will play a little more defensive, like only drop and be prepared to return home. And then if he doesn't, well, even if he's getting tanks, which is that usual nice initial measure, well, now it's goes to Roaches, then he's going to be okay. But the Roaches are seen. GuMiho now will be able to say, okay, yeah, continue building tanks, make sure they're in proper position. You know, the Marines can continue dropping, but as soon as they see a bit of a lack of response, worry about the potential 1-1 attack.
Yep, no, absolutely. I mean, this is good for GuMiho. He gets the information, he sees what's up, he knows it's Roaches at the very least, and he's still going to try and dive around with these Hellions. I believe the Queens over here, they've just been spreading some creep, so it won't be easy access for these Hellions. that don't hit the creep tumor there, but they will hit the 2 over on this side. I'm just going to back it up that little bit. So many roaches from Solo. It's been nothing but those since he hit 3-base saturation. And it looks as though he's just going to continue through pumping them out until 1-1 is done and he hits this timing attack window. On a map like this, GuMiho can have some high ground siege tanks positioned. He will see the Roach Ravager coming across the map, so it's time to go all-out defensive mode. He's got to get ready to hold this.
Yep, I think he's an armor. Yeah, so Hellbats are going to tank some of the shots. It's actually quite helpful. The amount of Marines here is rather impressive, but they do not have combat shields. Anti-armor missile will be absolutely beautiful, and it hits the majority of the Zerg army. The supplies are a bit of a lie right now, guys, especially the longer that GuMiho can just make Solar waffle. But Solar finally choosing to engage up to the right side. The tank is there, the Marine numbers are there, and that anti-armor missile is going to be added onto actually even further. And without the armor of the Roaches, GuMiho's Marines slaughter them.
Wow, didn't even need the SCVs, in fact, as he lost only one of the siege tanks. The link flank on the right side was a great idea, but it didn't do enough, and the anti-armor missile was so good. It's not often you see those Roach timings running scared from Marines, but GuMiho chased in full right he had to chase. And that is going to set GuMiho up beautifully as Solo tries to scramble into a Baneling nest, but Bane speed is forever away. GuMiho is over halfway to 2-2. It's Dragon Scale. Some of these pushes are going to be terrifying, and I'm feeling it for GuMiho right now.
I feel like we had a clickbait title there. You'll never believe what Ravens can do versus Roaches. You just don't think about it, right? We think a lot about the early creep denial, perhaps some auto turret harassment, but especially if it ends up being Ling Baneling, then the chances of getting a good AA missile is just, it's not really high. But Roaches, it's absolutely perfect. The triple medevac drop heading up to the top left side. Solar has not been able to see this as of yet, I believe. There's an Overlord over there, of course, but GuMiho can dip in and then dip out because there's no real reliable anti-air.
Yep. That's very true. There's just, that's the problem with Roaches, and it's going to be that way for a little while. As we push up one side, we drop up the other. Solo gets here with Lings. That's going to stop the initial drop. GuMiho's just going to go for it anyway. Spore trying to get burrowed underneath this. The Marine stim, the Lings die. Well, we're going to get rid of the Spore so the Medivacs don't take any damage. Anti-armor missile on the Queens this time on the right side as GuMiho really does just want to push. He believes he's got an opportunity right now. The picture-in-picture shows the drop is not being cleaned up, and GuMiho is pushing through this third base.
Yeah, the supplies have actually flipped. Now it is GuMiho on his upgraded bio, taking down Solar's Roach Ravager army. Solar just desperately trying to hold on, but losing drones, potentially losing hatcheries. He's got some upgrades on the way. He's got his hive on the way, but can he survive to that point is the question. He does push back the attack, but the drops are still going to be a nuisance.
God, GuMiho said he was amped up, and his play completely reflects that. He was not kidding in that interview. Up 20 supply right now, feeling it. He was targeting down drones with both different drops. 16 workers just died, and that evens out the worker count, but of course that's pretty great for GuMiho as Solo is still kind of just stuck on Roaches in a big way. Yes, he's trying to switch into Ling Bane. There are so many tanks to contend with. This next push of GuMiho is going to be terrifying as Solo has to defend this right side yet again. GuMiho just needs to get these tanks sieged, and he's going to start doing it, make sure they're spread against those biles. And let's see if Solo can do this. One big fight for him right now as he tries to come forward, but there's just not enough right yet, and he is going to start losing that base.
He's down 1-1 upgrades, only just now having his Carapace finished. Still hasn't tackled the tanks as GuMiho dives in further to the fight. He believes he can win right here, right now, and I think he's correct about that. GuMiho looking to make it to the finals of this tournament. 3-0 Solo.